I see Councillor, I'm just going to go through my list. And I believe that is it at the moment. So right now we do not have quorum, it looks like, Mr. Chair. So we'll just wait a moment to ensure that we can achieve quorum. I see Councillor Paleshi joining and Councillor Santos. So we will have quorum.
Good afternoon, Peter. Councillor Bowman checking in.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. And so, Mr. Chair, it is 2 o'clock. There appears to be a quorum present. We'll confirm that at roll call, and you can proceed when you wish.
Peter, you there?
Hi, Councillor Paleshi, yes.
Hi, Peter. Councillor Santos sent me a text, said she's not able to get in. Her login information is not working.
Yes, there was an email I just sent from the clerk's office. If we're asking people to use the attendee link instead of the panelist link, there's an issue with the panelist link in the invite. And then I'll see her. I did see her in the session. And
yeah. So try the panelist link.
The attendee link.
The attendee link, okay.
Yeah. And just while we're waiting, Richard, can we just test your audio, please?
Hello. Hi, Richard here.
Hi, Richard. Can you speak again? Because it kind of cut in and out.
Sorry about that. I'm speaking.
Yep. Now it's coming through loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair and members of the committee, just before we get started, just my apologies. The link that was sent out, the panelist link, there was something not right with it, so it wasn't working. So I apologize for that, and that's why we had to send out the update to join by the attendee link, and then we brought everybody into the meeting. Thank you.
So, Peter, do you want to give a couple minutes, or do you think other people may have that issue?
A few people have, but all members seem to be present except Councillor Willens at the moment.
So can we give it 2 minutes? We'll start at 2:05?
Certainly, yeah.
Okay.
Has Councillor Dillon, has the attendance been taken?
Councillor Dillon, good afternoon. No, it hasn't. We're just going to wait till 2:05 and start just because there was an issue with the link, so we're just going to wait for a few more people to join.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, City Clerk, it's 2:05. Do you mind if I start?
Certainly, you do have quorum, but yes, we can start.
Okay, so welcome to our Audit Committee meeting of December 7th, and we will begin the meeting with the City Clerk calling the roll for attendance at today's meeting.
Members of committee, I will call your name. Please indicate your presence. Councillor Santos.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Willens, who I don't see currently in the session. I'll come back. Councillor Paleshi. Councillor Paleshi? I'll come back to you. Councillor Bowman?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon?
Here.
Thank you. Member Ali is absent today, sent regrets. Member Jane?
Present.
Thank you. Member Zaman?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Willens? Appears to be absent. Councillor Paleshi, who I do see in the session. Councillor Paleshi?
I have to wait for a second. I'm present.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, you do have quorum present.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item is approval of the agenda. And I do know, I think, Member Zaman, I think you had written me, you would like to add something to the agenda?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. Just wanted to add an agenda item around update on the recruitment process for the internal audit director position on a permanent basis.
Okay, now City Clerk is, I'm not sure if this is something that can be in the open or is it in camera? And do we have someone here that can speak to it today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I'll start and then others may wish to speak. But if it is a general question regarding the procurement process, which I don't know, but I presume is underway, perhaps that would be a public question because it is a public process, but I don't know the nature of the questions in terms of where the city is in the process, what step, things like that. But if it's general questions, I'm assuming at this point, without any further knowledge, that it would be something that could be asked in public or at least started in public. But I'll defer to others if they have more information than I.
Through you, Chair, I can speak to providing an update on this matter if it's high level enough in open session.
Okay, and then after, if CEO, if you feel uncomfortable with some of the questions, we can deliberate in camera if need be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Okay, I see none. So I do have a motion moved by Member Zaman to approve the agenda, that the agenda for the Special Audit Committee meeting of December 7th be approved as published and circulated. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Okay, so before we proceed with the rest of the agenda, I would like to turn the floor over to our Acting Director, Richard Gervais, of the Internal Audit, to introduce some new staff of the Internal Audit team. Richard?
Richard, your mic is muted.
Thank you. So, a gentleman that recently started with us, his name is, bear with me a second here. Just want to make sure. I've got everybody. Okay, so we have Anand Harriman, who's just started in September or October, just a week before he came back. Are you on the line? And can you just show yourself? Yeah, I'm not sure we were ready for this. But if he isn't, we'll come back to that. And I believe everyone's met the remaining people on the team. Gurpreet, and Brad, and Sabrina, of course, and Naval. I'm not sure if, sorry, I was caught in a little unaware as I wasn't sure, didn't know where.
Yeah, and my apologies. they weren't identified in my notes, but that's not a problem. And if at a later time or at the end of the meeting, you do want to say anything else, feel free to just intervene, not a problem. But welcome to the new staff. We now go on to declarations of interest on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? I see none, so the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. We go now on to our consent motion process. And essentially, I will read each agenda item, and which is subject to the consent motion. And any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. So I'll start reading the relevant agenda items, and members can identify any items to be held for debate. Item 6.1, staff report regarding corporate fraud prevention hotline, update Q3. In consent.
Hold, please.
Hold, okay. Item 6.2, staff report, deferral of realty services audit.
Hold, please.
Hold, okay, held. Item 6.3, staff report regarding emergency expenses audit. In consent. Item 6.4, staff report regarding internal audit risk assessment and development of an audit universe. In consent. Staff report regarding the fraud hotline expansion to Brampton residents. In consent. Item 6.6, staff report regarding status of management action plans, MAP. In consent. Item 6.7, vendor performance management audit. In consent. So I'll hand it over to the city clerk, who will relist these items. Over to you, City Clerk, and then after you'll ask for a recorded vote.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the following items are identified for debate. 6.1 and 6.2, both held by Councillor Bowman. 6.1, report on corporate fraud prevention hotline update Q3 2021. 6.2, a staff report regarding deferral of realty services audit. And the remaining items 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, and 6.7 will be approved as part of the consent motion. And a recorded vote is required as per council's trial process. So members, all in favor of the consent motion, I will call your name. Councillor Santos.
Yes.
Councillor Willens still appears to be absent. Councillor Paleshi.
Yes.
Councillor Bowman.
Present.
Councillor Singh.
Yes.
Councillor Dillon.
Yes.
Chair Medeiros.
Yes.
Member Jane.
Yes.
Member Zaman.
Yes.
That carries unanimously, 8-0.
Thank you very much. And now we go to our first presentation. And I will welcome Maja Kuzmanov and Maria Kushnud, partner of Kpmg, audit planning report for the year ending December 31st. Welcome, Maja, and go ahead.
Medeiros, good afternoon to yourself and the members of committee. I'll just take a brief moment to introduce Maria Kushnud, who is the new partner in KPMG's enterprise practice, replacing Kevin Travers. Even though Maria is new in the partner role, she's been involved with City's year-end external audit since 2016, so she is very familiar with the city and our operations. In addition to that, Maria has over 13 years of experience in financial statement audits for public sector, non-for-profit organization and charities. So I will turn it to Maria right now, who will walk the committee through 2021 audit planning report. Thank you.
Thanks, Maya, and thanks everybody on this call. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. As Maya just communicated to you, I am taking over from Kevin Travers as an audit partner for the audit of the financial statements of the City of Brampton and related entities. This switch of an audit partner is to comply with the rotational requirements at Kpmg and are applicable to all audit partners in the firm. This rotational requirement is in place to conserve our independence with our audit clients and to comply with the global independence requirements as they apply to all of our audit partners. So I will be taking you and the committee through our audit planning report today. There's a lot of information here, so in the interest of time and taking this report as read, I will only be highlighting the key items in this report. With that, I will start on page 1, which is the executive summary. On the executive summary page, we've highlighted some of the key items for you. Similar to prior years, this is really an opportunity for us to connect with you and provide you with an overview of our audit plan for the City of Brampton. Our audit plan includes the procedures we will be performing for the various aspects of the financial statements. We've also highlighted our scope of work, materiality, and audit risks related to this audit. We'll get into the detail for some of these as we go through the presentation. Our audit plan has been developed based on our discussions with management, and we've updated our detailed procedures where necessary due to the changes to the city's operations or the changes in the general economic environment, including any impact of the pandemic, for example. Under group audit scope, on the slide, you will see all the various audits we're engaged to complete that feed into the city's consolidated audit. We've separated these engagements based on which ones are significant for the purposes of issuing our audit opinion on the city's consolidated financial statements, and which ones are not significant from the perspective of the city audit, but are still required to be completed due to the Municipal Act requirement. With that, I'll move on to page 3. So page 3 talks about materiality. Materiality is calculated to identify risks of material misstatements in an audit, and also to develop, to help us develop an appropriate audit response to such risks. While we use materiality as the final check for errors and misstatements, we use a much lower threshold for flagging errors that should be reported to you, whether they are corrected or uncorrected. This threshold for the current year is $1 million, as noted on the slide, for the consolidated financial statements, and there will be a lower threshold for the smaller audit engagements. In addition to this, if we note anything that is below this threshold, which is of an unusual or fraudulent nature, or signifies a control deficiency in the processes that are in place, we bring that forward to you as well. We've also noted the details of our benchmark and the percentage of the benchmark here for your information. And just a quick comment that these metrics are consistent with prior year as well in terms of how we determined materiality. With that, I'll move on to page 4. Actually, page 4 and 5 go hand in hand together. And here we've highlighted the presumed risks that are required to be considered and taken into account for all of our audits as per the Canadian auditing standards. I want to note here that we've not noted any heightened risks for these 2 items for the City of Brampton, but as part of our standard approach, we perform these procedures to address these risks. The first one is to ensure that the revenue recognition for the city is done properly, especially as it relates to deferred revenue for obligatory reserve funds. We've provided a detailed approach for revenue as part of our audit plan on page 7 for your reference. The second item noted here is the risk of management override of controls. That is due to the unique nature, unique position rather, that management is in to be able to perpetrate fraud. Really that is due to their ability to override any controls that are in place. To address this risk, we perform quite a few procedures, including testing of journal entries and manual adjustments that are made by management. We also look at retrospective review of any significant estimates. And if there are any unusual transactions, we evaluate these transactions to understand the business rationale for these transactions. And in addition to all of these procedures, we also incorporate a new unannounced procedure every year to maintain an element of unpredictability in our audits. I'll move on to page 6. So pages 6 6 to 9 include some key audit procedures related to the significant areas of the audit. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list by any means, but the intent is to provide you with an overview of our audit approach. I will not go into too much detail with these procedures, but I will note that each year we update these procedures based on any changes internally in the organization or externally, such as something like the pandemic, to the extent that it has an impact on the financial reporting for the city. In addition to these procedures, we also have a discussion with management every year to inquire if there are any additional areas or procedures that management would like us to focus on or perform, which might not be otherwise required as part of our financial statement audit. We're currently in discussion with management to define the scope of work related to these additional areas, which might include specified audit procedures related to repair and reserve funds and cash handling procedures. With that, I'll move on to page 10, where we've provided an overview of our timelines. These timelines have been discussed with management and are scheduled in such a way that it would allow us to meet all of the city timelines and deadlines. So moving on to page 11, I want to very quickly touch upon the current development section of our report, where we've included the list of all upcoming accounting standards. There are a couple of new standards coming up for implementation for city's fiscal 2023, and we're currently in discussion with management for support in this process. And with that, I'll get into appendices. So I'm not going to go through all the appendices. I'll just highlight a few key items in Appendix 1. So Appendix 1 provides you with a summary of our communications with you, and our presentation today is part of these required communications. This presentation today is also an opportunity for the Audit Committee to provide any comments that you might have for us. Upon completion of our audit, we'll come back to you, to this committee, with our findings report, where we will highlight the results of our audit. There is an additional information included in the remainder of the appendices to provide you with insights into audit and assurance matters that are trending at this point, but I'll leave that to your own reading. And that really concludes the formal part of this presentation. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them now.
Okay, thank you very much. And just as a reminder to members of the committee, on the chat box, feel free to put a request if you would like to ask a question or make a comment. And I will go to Member Zaman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to KPMG representatives for this presentation here. I just had a very quick question. I think during the presentation it was mentioned that KPMG may undertake some specified procedures beyond just the specific audit here. And the scope of that is still being identified, I think was what was suggested. I guess my question is, to the extent that KPMG will undertake these specified procedures and assist, for example, in improving some of the internal controls in place here at the city, how does that impact your independence, from an audit perspective? Or does that mean you're sort of auditing your own recommendations? As an example, how do you ensure the independence isn't impaired when those specified procedures are undertaken?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. So the specified procedures I referred to, they will not impair our independence, because we're not looking at controls. We're more looking at transactions and whether they're complying with certain procedures that are in place. So our specified procedures audit would be very, the deliverable for that, or the result for that, would be very factual, based on what samples we tested, what was the result of those samples, and that would be it. So we're not really involved in any sort of control engagement or internal control engagement at all.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Santos.
Thanks so much, and through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Maria, for the overview. A quick question, because normally, and thank you for introducing yourself, I believe it's Kevin Travers who's been on the file here in Brampton for a long time. Do we know how long Kevin's been working as on the Brampton audit?
I don't off the top of my head, no.
Through the
No.
chair to, it's Maya Kuzmanov. I think I can answer that question. Kevin actually started on City of Brampton file as a junior accountant. That was his first job. So I think we're going close to 25 years that he's been involved with City of Brampton audit.
Okay, and Maria, you're taking over what Kevin, I guess, for Kevin?
That's correct.
Okay, and how often, I guess, does a rotation normally happen with auditors? Because it kind of builds on citizen members' question before in terms of auditing the recommendations and stuff that have been audited and the recommendations for the past 25 years. So how often would a rotation actually happen?
So this is a relatively new requirement, if I were to put it that way, for non-listed entities, which is what the City of Brampton would be classified as. This requirement was put in place 7 years ago, and the rotational requirement is for 10 years for non-listed entities. So after 10 years, you're required to change your partner for a non-listed entity, which is an entity that is not listed on the public exchange. So City of Brampton would fall into that bucket, and for an entity like City of Brampton, it would be 10 years.
Okay, thank you. Because citizen member Abid Zaman brought up a good point, and thank you, Abid, for asking it. I think that rotation is important because as we are getting recommendations on things to take a closer look at, etc., and implement it, it's essentially the same auditor providing the same audit on the things that were recommended. And so I imagine that's probably why that rotation of 10 years is in existence. But just to be clear, Kevin Travers has been working on the Brampton file for 25 years or 20 years. Maya, is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, correct. About 25 years, yes. Obviously not in the partner capacity, but overall he's been involved with Brampton file for about 25 years.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to put that out there and the importance of that. And thank you, citizen member Abid, for bringing that point up. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add one more comment here. So I just wanted to add that for any audit client, the requirement that we have for any engagement outside of the financial audit, when we are engaged to provide any advisory services, we're very particular in terms of what we accept as that in terms of an advisory engagement, and it's very important that we don't make any decisions when we're in an advisory capacity. So we're only allowed to make recommendations. We're never allowed to make any decisions on behalf of management. So that concern of auditing our own work that's how we try to manage that risk. But I do hear what Councillor Santos is trying to explain.
Yeah, and thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Maria, for bringing that up. I just when somebody is working with city staff for 20 years plus, there's like relationships that happen there, right? And things become comfortable. And so I think that's the other reason why that important rotation rule exists is to interrupt some of that stuff and make sure that people remain have integrity as in their various audits as well. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Santos to receive the presentation and approve the staff report. And you'll see the motion on the screen. And we'll take it as read. Does anyone oppose?
From the council authorized investigations that were out of scope of the review to internal audit. The report was presented to us, or an outline of the report, which is now available on the city's website, was reported to us on September 22nd, and the actual report was presented to council September 29th, and in that report it had said a large number or a number of reports had been forwarded to the Integrity Commissioner and to the Audit Office. So do we have a record of when those reports were referred? Because according to the dates of the third-party investigation, they should have been referred prior to the end of September 30th quarter.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. We received no new reports through the Clearview system, which is our formal corporate system. So I probably wasn't clear enough on that. So we didn't receive any new logged in our system.
Okay, thanks, Richard. I'm just trying to figure out the ones that Deloitte referred to you. Did they come from the fraud hotline to Deloitte, or did they come through Deloitte's fraud hotline?
They came in through their fraud hotline, completely separate from our own.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And the only other question I have is 20 reports were referred to the city, to the Integrity Commissioner, are marked closed. Now, Ms. Sheik is not here. Does that mean that there's nothing further happening on those, or do we need to ask that of her?
They're closed in our system because we're anything that goes to the Integrity Commissioner is outside our jurisdiction, so we wouldn't be following up. They're still with the Integrity Commissioner, and I don't know the status of them.
Okay, and you're still working on 19?
Yes.
And have any of those been looked at to date at all since we're in December?
Yes, there's a number of them that are tied to some issues that were reported earlier this year, and we sat with HR, and we're sharing information to get to a resolution on those. There's a few that are left open that I'll be going through shortly, and I'll be sitting down. Mostly these appear to be human resource related issues, so I'll be sitting down with HR again to go through them with them.
Okay, but none of those are closed yet?
No.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Richard. That's all I have, Councillor, or
Okay.
I mean, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Santos.
Thanks so much. Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bowman, for holding this report. I know that we're all trying to make sure that any issues outstanding from the Deloitte investigation, which was closed, are dealt with appropriately by internal audit, as well as the IC. That's good to know. But I'm just trying to figure out, just because the investigation is closed, but nobody actually gave an update or a number on how much we spent on the Deloitte investigation. Does anyone have an exact cost of how much the Deloitte investigation cost? I mean, in addition to the extra work that's coming out of it, which is awesome, which is great. We want to make sure that it's thorough. But does staff have a total number yet on the cost of the Deloitte investigation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can provide some information on that. I don't have the exact number, but I know I signed off on the invoices that have been paid. And it is just above 500,000, I believe, but I believe that includes the taxes, and some of that is rebatable to the city. So I think the net cost, I believe, is just under 500,000.
Oh, okay, thank you. I see that perhaps Gina from procurement would have a total. Is Gina here? I take it not.
No, Gina
Anyone
is in the
else?
session.
Okay. Gina? Okay, so I guess Gina is not answering, or is not present.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I had a question about the 19 reports that are currently under review by internal audit. So typically for the reports that come in through the City of Brampton's fraud hotline, we get a summary table of those reports. So once these reports that have come from Deloitte, once those reviews are complete, can we expect to see that summary table provided to this committee?
Through the chair, yes, will we be reporting? It'll be included in our yearly report that we'll be presenting to Audit Committee in February.
Great, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Plushy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it safe to assume that the Deloitte's fraud hotline was the one that was set up during the investigation?
Through the
Mr.
chair, that's my understanding. Yes.
Okay, I thought it was our own fraud hotline that was meant for Deloitte, so I didn't know how we were classifying that. So have you received now, and I know Councillor Bowman had some questions, and I think I might need to re-ask. Have you received now all complaints subject to the investigation from either Deloitte or from our own internal fraud hotline?
Through the chair, we didn't receive any cases through our own internal fraud hotline that in Q3 that were related to the investigation. All the tickets that were showing for all the issues we're showing for the third quarter came through Deloitte, a part of their investigation, and the system is essentially closed and there's no more reporting.
So even
question?
Sorry,
does that answer your question?
kind of. So even though prior to Deloitte in putting in their own fraud hotline, there were complaints that were coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of those complaints go through our own internal fraud hotline?
There were some reports on our internal fraud hotline that were related, that were within the scope of the Deloitte investigation, and we forwarded those to Deloitte themselves. We went through a number of open issues that we had, and they took on any of the tickets that were in scope of the investigation.
Okay, and any of those that did come through the fraud hotline that were forwarded to Deloitte, were any of those investigated by Deloitte, or were all of those investigated by Deloitte?
No, through the chair. They returned some of those issues to us. So if it was if it was within scope, they investigated it, and it stayed within their system and their process. And when we met with them, when it came back in October, they gave us back the issues that were, in September, they gave us back the issues that were out of scope of their investigation.
Okay. I think that clears it up for me a little bit. Councillor Bowman may have been clear, but it wasn't clear for me, so I just needed to ask those questions. And then, based off of your last comment to member, you're going to be reporting on all of the outstanding investigations that Deloitte didn't look into in February?
Yes. Sorry, I cut you off. My apologies.
Yes, no problem. So currently, you said how many are outstanding? 23, I believe you said.
From the Deloitte investigation?
Yes.
2019.
Oh, 19. Okay, I don't know where the 23 came. So those 19 are going to be, you're going to be investigating them from now until February, and you feel confident that you'll be able to report to Audit Committee in February?
Yes.
Okay.
So most of those are, as I mentioned earlier, they're personnel management issues, and we're working with human resources to assess them and take action.
Okay, thank you. I guess the last, Councillor Santos brought up the dollar figure, and maybe this isn't the proper place to talk about that amount, but it was my understanding that we were looking at the dollar amount being closer to 300,000. Then how did it get to 500,000?
Through you, Mr. Chair, would you like me to answer?
If you can.
I think there was a public statement, and I don't remember if it was in council or committee of council, that suggested, based on best estimates at the point in time, that it was probably going to get close to 400,000 for the costs. The actual fees that Deloitte charged for was about just over 400,000. And there was the whistleblower platform, which council authorized. So there was a fee for that of about 7,500. There were some technology fees for some of their investigative work that they've done in terms of reviewing emails that come in and things, documents that were supplied through the investigation. And then there were some administrative expenses and HST, and that added up to the value that the CAO quoted, the $539,000.
Okay, Peter, was the amount that was discussed in public, was that made by a councillor?
I think a question was asked of myself, and I'd said it would probably be in the order of double, and I said it would probably around 400,000. I recall making that statement at one point.
All right, I can't talk about the dollar amounts that we discussed in camera, but what I can say is any dollar amount that we discussed in camera wasn't even close to the 400,000. From my recollection.
Through you, Mr. Chair, those were point in time discussions about what the estimates of the costs would be.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. I see no further questions. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman to move the report. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. We now go on to our next item, and I believe deferral of Realty Services audit. Was that Councillor Bowman as well, City Clerk?
It was, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bowman.
Yep, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just, going through the deferral for Realty Services, when was the last time that they were audited? Richard, do you know? Because it says we were going to do it in 2020, then we didn't, then we were going to do it in third quarter 2022 and we didn't, and now it's scheduled for third quarter, or I should say 2021, and now it's scheduled for third quarter 2022.
Through the chair, I'm not aware of when it was last audited. The fact that it's been deferred twice, and I was mentioning this earlier, I haven't had a chance to discuss this with the commissioner and the director, but what I'm going to propose is that we do a consulting engagement next year to do a gap analysis of their processes so that they can get a clear roadmap on what they need to do to become compliant. I think scheduling another audit may not be helpful at this point, but that's the approach I want to take. But or would recommend to the next director. But
okay, yeah, and that's fine, Richard. I'm just wondering because this portfolio has now been moved under legislative services. So I would think if it's being moved, it's probably a good time for an audit to make sure, because there, you had mentioned, a route to compliance. There's nothing to say they're not in total compliance right now.
Correct.
So, yeah, so I would just, I don't like to see things like this put off and off for a number of years, because I know that all the various departments in the city were very busy, very tied up during COVID. So, the sooner we can do that audit, the better. I understand COVID took its toll on a lot of the areas in the city, but I don't think that should be an excuse that no audit can be done on them. So I think your idea is a good one. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Plushy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bowman, for as your chair of this new portfolio in your your existing portfolio. I tend to agree, and I would almost say that I don't think I'll support a deferral of realty services. I think that this should actually go back to. I would rather refer this to council and have you as chair of legislative services have a discussion with the commissioner to see what, because I agree. I think an audit should happen, and then the new commissioner of legislative services kind of knows what he's dealing with. So I would rather see. I'd support referral of this back to council and have you have that discussion with the commissioner if you're okay with that, Councillor Bowman.
Happy to, sure.
Okay, so we have a referral on the floor moved by Councillor
Mr.
Palashi.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead, City Clerk.
Sorry, I just wish to get clarity on the referral. So there is a council meeting tomorrow. The minutes from today's meeting were not scheduled to be presented to council tomorrow. They were going to be presented to council, I believe, on January. But is the intent to refer this report to council tomorrow, Councillor Palashi, or to council on January 26th?
I would leave that up to Councillor Bowman, how fast he can have a discussion with the commissioner.
Thank you. I don't mind moving it to the 26th, Peter. That gives me lots of time to speak to the commissioner well in advance of it coming to council.
Okay, so we got a referral by moved by Councillor Palashi to the January 26th council meeting. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. Item 6.3, emergency expenses audit. And I think that was that Member Zaman who held it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 6.3 to the end of the listed items were approved as part of consent.
Oh, so they're already in consent. Okay, so we're rolling along, and we now go on to, I believe, is it councillor question or is it member question period?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the next item would be, under new business, 8.1, the item by Member Zaman regarding the Chief Audit Executive hiring process.
So Member Zaman, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So basically, I guess I just wanted to inquire about the plans that we have to fill the Chief Audit Executive position on a permanent basis. I believe there was a special meeting that was called back in July to get some clarity on the hiring process for this position, but I couldn't recall if we'd received any updates since then. I guess my main concern here is, this role over the past couple of years constantly has been filled either on a contract basis or on an acting basis, which is not, great from the perspective of maintaining independence of this role. I do get the impression, from some of the communications earlier in this call as well, and other communications that I've seen, that there may be some ongoing recruitment process for this position, but I didn't see anything on the website of the city as well. So just wanted to see where we are in terms of filling this position on a permanent basis.
Okay, thank you. CEO, maybe you're best to address the question.
Well, thank you, Chair. So certainly, perhaps Evie's on the call can speak to a little bit more about the recruitment and advertising, et cetera. But the member is correct. So the position of Director of Internal Audit has been posted for 3 or 4 weeks. I believe it closes this Friday. And the posting is a permanent full-time position, which is certainly our intent. The previous meeting, which I can't recall if the member was in attendance or not, but there was correspondence, an agenda item with respect to this particular issue, I believe, which was closed session advice for committee that had received it. That stated both the chair and the vice chair will be invited as participants in this process. So they'll have that line of sight. And with respect to any past issues, I would just say council, both the last term of council and this term of council, have considered the idea of an auditor general model at both occasions. And so it's natural when having those types of conversations that this position in particular also would arguably be impacted. However, it's clear that seemingly for the rest of this term at least, this council is confident to proceed with the existing model, and can't speak for the following term of council, but it's at their leisure moving forward. In the meantime, though, we are recruiting a permanent director of internal audit.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Just wanted to get an idea of when was this position specifically posted, because I couldn't see it on the website when I checked just prior to coming on for this call.
I may ask Omer to provide those details.
Through the chair, it's Avi. I can speak to that, David. We posted this posting 3 weeks ago. It just came down on December 5th. So next step is obviously screening the resumes and setting up the panel and the interview schedule, which I'll work with David to do so. So through the chair, the posting did come down on December 5th. It was posted for 3 weeks. It was posted on LinkedIn, our leadership page, as well as our career web page.
Okay, thank you for that update, Mr. Mangat. And it's great to hear, that, in my apologies, I wasn't present for the last audit committee meeting, so maybe I had missed that update at that point in time. It's good to know that there is a line of visibility for this committee directly into that recruitment process as well. I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about this in the public session, but just I think it should be okay. The quick question is, besides the chair and the vice chair, was there any discussion about any other members of this committee, particularly if there was interest in having some representation from the city members in the recruitment process? Was that discussed, or are you able to provide any clarity in that regard?
Yeah, I'm not sure Evie may have can speak to this or not, but I would refer the member to the closed session information that was provided to committee. Perhaps that may have been circulated to you previously, but perhaps the clerk can recirculate that. The answer lies in that information versus us speaking to it publicly now.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Barrick. Those are all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Flush, is it for this item or was that from before? Oh, that's from before. Yeah, my apologies. Okay, so I see no further speakers, and we'll go move on to our next item. Councillor question period or committee member question period. Any members from the committees have any questions regarding today's agenda? I see none. Public question period, City Clerk.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we now move on to our last item, which is adjournment, and our next meeting will be, I have here December 7th, but a motion is to adjourn, and we haven't scheduled our next meeting, City Clerk. I have here December 7th.
My apologies in that annotated agenda. The next meeting of the committee is February 8th, 2022.
Okay, my apologies, and thank you so much. And again, let me take this opportunity before we adjourn to thank staff, thank especially our internal audit team, the City Clerk, and everyone involved for the support you provide this committee, and wishing everyone happy holidays and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So a motion moved by Councillor Singh to adjourn today's meeting. Anyone opposed? I see none. And